What is up, booktube? It is Monty. I'm back again once again with another video. Today I'm doing an unhaul, and if you're watching this the day that it goes live, it means that I was successful in editing 2 videos today, which was not my plan. But last night you might have seen me tweet out that I spent somehow Monty found $998 to spend on books. Now, we haven't hit the end of the year, but I'm not buying any more books at this point in the next 10 days. So love that for me. But it was like my reading was offset by, the library, which so far has saved me like 600 some odd dollars, and ARCs from publishers saved me like $300. So like we're breaking even here in the terms of like what I am personally spending on books, and like sometimes there's overlap. Sometimes the publisher sends me an ARC and then I just read it from my library or I buy it. So like saving money is all very relative, but we're gonna try and do better. My bookshelf is also looking a little full because I don't like anything really on this shelf. My goal would be to have everything on this like a third shelf and above. We're not there yet. It's okay. It's a process. But in order for me to do that, I have to unhaul some things. So that's what this is. I have a stack of books. It goes up to here. We're going to go through them. I'm going to tell you what they are. Most of these are things that I have read in my life, but towards the bottom, there's a few where I just looked at it and I said, there's no way I'm reading this book. The Monty who purchased that book just wanted to spend some money, but the Monty that is me has no desire to read it. So the first thing I'm getting rid of is Leah Johnson's You Should See Me in a Crown. This was a cute book. I think I gave it 3 or 4 stars last year. I think I actually gave it 4 stars. But I'm never going to read this again, and I definitely think this is one of those books that just kind of exists for the children. So I'm going to go bring it to half price books so the children can read it. It's like a queer, sapphic, small town, trying to become the prom queen to get a college scholarship situation. It was fine, but I don't need it. The next are also books that I enjoyed. And that is Crush and Crave. Flip-flop them around if you want to. This is like gone on to become like a quintet. There's gonna be like 5 or 6 books now. I thought that Crush was a better book than Crave, but it's been all year and I haven't read Covet. Aaron from Booked and Busy sent me Covet, and then my boss dropped it in some mayonnaise on accident while we were at work. So I'm just gonna read that from the library. There's no way I would want like 5 of these chunkers on my shelf. But I did enjoy that. I'll leave a link to the reading vlog review thing I did up in the cards if I remember. Then I have A River of Royal Blood by Amanda Joy. I liked this first book, but I did not like the conclusion in this duology, A Queen of Gilded Horns. And the covers no longer match. So there's no, like, even though I like this one, the covers don't match. I don't really need this one just sitting on my shelf. This was a book that was sent to me by Penguin for free. So I don't really feel too horrible about getting rid of it, especially since I'm going to be passing it on to a used bookstore where some child who might need it more than me will be able to have it. Next is a book that Aaron also sent me, and that is The Beautiful by Renee Audier. I remember reading this last year and being really confused because I thought that you could definitely see that there were vampires the entire book, and people say that you don't. But this is sort of a gothic-y story that is set in the city of New Orleans, where we follow our main character. I think her name is like Odette? No, it's not. It's Celine. Don't know where I got Odette from. But Celine is immigrating from somewhere in Europe. I want to say France, but who knows. Yeah, she's from a dressmaker in Paris, and she's leaving Paris, and she gets dragged into this like underground nightlife scene in New Orleans, and there's like a vampires and things are happening, people are dying. It was cute. I definitely didn't understand why people were hating this book as much as they wanted to say they did in like late 2019 or whatever. Because again, I thought that the vampire references were there from the beginning, as long as you had two brain cells to rub together. But I have zero desire to read The Damned or The Righteous, especially because all of the books follow different characters now. So we're not even like, I know it's like the same friend group, but it's just not for me. Next is a book that I have been holding out for because I believe maybe it's Us, or What If It Is, whatever this, the companion to this is about to come out. I think I have that on my wish list. So I had this on my shelf being like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna set this aside. I'm gonna set this aside because maybe the sequel to this little dual, I'm gonna set it aside. I'm gonna set this aside because maybe I will hold on to that, but I kind of want to get rid of it. I'm not gonna lie, because that book is just bad. It's not a very good book. The Housewives by Brian Moylan. This was just boring. It offered nothing that I think even a casual fan didn't already know. And I was originally going to return this to Books A Million, but the dust jacket is kind of like, I don't know. It's not the prettiest. There's some wrinkling in it, and I didn't want to give it back to Books A Million like that. But I will happily give this to Half Price Books because they be selling books with no dust jacket. So it's not like it's ripped and torn and shit. It's just not pristine. Next, I have the first two Magnus Chase books. So the Hamper of Thor book 2 and the first book, The Sword of Summer. These are just, this book was actually really good. The Sword of Summer made me think that maybe Rick Riordan could do it, like he was that guy. But this book just solidified for me that I don't think that Rick Riordan needs to write teenage protagonists, particularly if they're going to continue to live in this weird middle grade shelving land, because the voices just feel wrong. Like, are there 16-year-old boys who talk like Magnus Chase? Yes, there are. But I feel like there is no growth to Rick Riordan's writing, and I almost wish he was continuing to write characters that were still 11 or 12. When he aged up the protagonists for the Heroes of Olympus, it made sense because, you know, it was a different arc. But for Magnus Chase, I kind of wish he had just gone back and made Magnus a 12-year-old, because he acts like a 12-year-old, he talks like a 12-year-old. The stakes are the same that, you know, Percy Jackson was facing. And these books are just getting longer, but the font size inside them stays relatively large, which makes me continuously think that they are indeed a middle grade story. So I'm just going to give these away. The children can have them. The Red Scrolls of Magic by Cassandra Clare and Wesley Chu. I feel bad for Wesley Chu because you don't ever get name checked when people talk about this, but I've had this for years at this point. I originally bought it because I thought maybe I would include it when I was reading my Cassandra Clare books, but I actually hate Alec Lightwood. He brings me no joy. And I particularly don't like his relationship with Magnus after a certain point in the Mortal Instruments, because I feel like what Alec did is just so unforgivable. So I'm just gonna get rid of this because I'm not gonna read this, because this kind of takes place during the part of their lives together that I didn't think was particularly forgivable, and I don't care. I just don't care. Next, I have Harry Potter book 5 and book 1, The Sorcerer's Stone. These are just going, like, this was my favorite Harry Potter book for a really long time, but I haven't reread a Harry Potter book since I was like 18 years old. That was like 8 years ago. So there's literally no point for me to continue to have them. The next 4 books are things that I have not read and I have realized that I have no desire to read. First up is My Education by Susan Choi. This follows, I think it's like a graduate student who gets involved with her professor and his wife. Don't care. Never gonna read it. Next, I have The Reality Dysfunction by Peter F. Hamilton. This is the first book in a classic sci-fi saga situation. Never gonna read it. Never gonna read. I bought it because it was really big and I thought it'd be worth my money, but I'm not gonna read it. I'm not going to. New York, a novel by Edward Rutherford, who is known for writing like these really epic stories set in a particular location around like wherever. So there's a couple of these chunkers that are just like titled after whatever location that he's chronicling, and it's a fictionalized account but based in history. That's kind of my thing, but at this point I would probably just read this from the library, and I probably would get the audiobook and I wouldn't even read this copy. And it's not like Edward Rutherford is some, he's always at the indie bookstore. So like I'll see him again if I really want to bring it back. Next, I have The Brothers K by David James Duncan. This was like a family saga that I hauled last year, and I've never once this year looked at my shelf and said I want to read this. So I don't think I need that either. The last two are both books that I read for my patrons for their Patreon exclusive reading vlog and just didn't actually like. So the first one was Kristen Hanna's Firefly Lane. This book had everything that it should have been, like a 5-star for me. It's messy interpersonal dramas between these lifelong friends who have a falling out, but the falling out that they had I thought was again so unforgivable that I didn't believe the reconciliation. I didn't want to see the reconciliation. I also thought that one half of the friendship was just not really developed, and that was Kate Malarkey. She had like literally nothing to do for the entire book. Well, and it's not like Tully Hart had a whole lot to do, but Kate had like literally nothing. So this can go. Kristen Hanna is a very popular author. I don't think that I'll be reading from her again, but I do think that her prose was easily accessible if that's something that you're looking for, particularly in historical fiction. And then the last book is also historical fiction, and that is A Well-Behaved Woman by Therese Ann Fowler. This is a fictionalized account of the Vanderbilts, particularly, I think her name is Alva Vanderbilt? Yes. Alva Smith, who becomes Alva Vanderbilt, and it chronicles the fall of the Vanderbilt family in the late 1800s or so, like early 1900s, like that kind of a thing. Where they were just spending their money recklessly. And it's like crazy to see that these families who were buying up entire city blocks in New York City and building these sprawling mansions suddenly like have no money, and their relatives are now on CNN telling the news to people. So it was a okay book. It had everything I wanted it to have. It had, a determined Alva Smith who was determined to rise above her station in life and get wealth and excess. But then when she got the wealth and excess, I don't know, it wasn't written in a way that I particularly cared for or enjoyed. So I don't recommend it, but it wasn't horrible. After reading it, I would still read Therese Ann Fowler's book about Zelda Fitzgerald. That could be interesting, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to do that, but I wouldn't rule it out. It's just it's not high on my priority list. So those are all the things that I will be unhauling this holiday season. Feel free to let me know down in the comments below if you have read these things, if you have unhauled anything recently, and I will see you guys again soon with another video. But until then, and until next time, bye.